Sometime around the year 600, in a royal court somewhere in northern India, a king sat down in front of a small wooden board, and for the first time in recorded history, watched a war happen without anyone dying. The pieces on that board weren't abstract shapes yet. They were infantry, cavalry, elephants, chariots, the actual structure of an Indian army, shrunk down and placed on 64 squares, so a ruler could rehearse violence without paying for it in bodies. That game had a name, Chaturanga. And within 300 years, it had been captured, translated, redesigned, and weaponized by at least 4 different empires, each with their own specific reason for needing a war they could lose safely. Here's the thing. Almost every chess video skips completely, because they're too busy racing through dates. Chaturanga wasn't built for fun. Sanskrit military texts from the same era describe the 4 divisions of a real Indian army, almost word for word: infantry, cavalry, elephant corps, chariots. Historians studying the game's earliest structure have pointed out something genuinely strange. The pieces moved in ways that mirrored actual battlefield doctrine of the period. Elephants smashed through in straight, unstoppable lines. Cavalry darted diagonally, fast and unpredictable. Infantry crept forward 1 square at a time, exactly the way foot soldiers actually advanced. This wasn't abstraction for its own sake. This was a simulation. And the king in the middle of the board, weak, slow, capable of moving 1 square in any direction, wasn't weak by accident either. In actual warfare, the king was the single most protected asset on any battlefield. Lose him, lose the war, lose the throne, possibly lose your head. So the game encoded that fear directly into the rules. Protect the fragile thing in the center. Everything else exists to keep him alive. Chess, from day one, was never really about winning. It was about learning to think like someone whose worst-case scenario was losing an entire kingdom. Then it left India, and everything changed. Because every civilization that captured this game immediately started rewriting it to reflect their own specific anxieties. Persia got it first, sometime in the 500s or 600s, renamed it Shatranj, and made one edition that tells you everything about what Persian court culture actually valued. They introduced verbal announcements. When you threatened the enemy king, you had to say it out loud. Shah, meaning king, was under attack. When the king had no way out, you said Shah mat. The king is helpless. That phrase eventually became checkmate in English, a piece of Persian court etiquette still sitting inside a word English speakers use every single day without knowing where it came from. Persian Shatranj wasn't just a war simulation anymore. It was a war simulation with formal court manners bolted onto it. Because Persian political culture cared enormously about protocol, about the correct, respectful way to announce that someone's king was about to fall. Even fake defeat had to be handled with dignity. Then came the 7th century Islamic conquests, and chess crossed into a completely different set of anxieties entirely. Islamic scholars adopted Shatranj enthusiastically, and it became one of the first board games in history to receive serious academic treatment. Scholars like al-Adli in the 9th century wrote analytical texts studying opening strategies and endgame positions with a level of rigor that wouldn't reappear in European chess literature for another 600 years. Al-Adli's actual manuscript is lost completely, every copy gone, but later texts reference his work constantly, describing analysis so advanced that some historians now genuinely suspect medieval Islamic scholars understood positional strategy centuries before anyone in Europe caught up. But Islamic scholars also had a specific theological problem to solve, and it's one modern chess players almost never think about. Islamic tradition generally prohibited representational imagery, particularly of living beings. So over generations, the physical pieces themselves transformed. Elephants and horses slowly abstracted into simple geometric shapes, stylized blocks and curves that suggested a battlefield without depicting one directly. You can trace the entire modern chess piece design, the abstract shapes sitting on boards worldwide right now, directly back to a specific religious constraint from over 1,000 years ago. Nobody sat down and decided abstraction looked more elegant. Theology forced the pieces to stop looking like living things, and the aesthetic just stuck permanently. But here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it's the transformation that should genuinely surprise you, because it happened last, and it rewrote the entire emotional core of the game. For roughly 600 years, across India, Persia, and the Islamic world, the piece standing next to the king was called the Vizier, or counselor, and it was almost pathetically weak, one square diagonally. That's it, a quiet advisor whispering suggestions, nothing more. Then chess reached medieval Europe sometime around the 10th century, and over the following few hundred years, that weak little advisor transformed into the single most powerful piece on the entire board, the queen. This wasn't a strategic balancing decision made by some medieval game designer sitting in a workshop. Historians studying the timing have connected it directly to a specific cultural moment. Late medieval Europe was watching several genuinely powerful queens actually run entire countries. Isabella of Castile personally financed military campaigns and helped unify Spain into a single kingdom. Other European queens across the period wielded real direct political and military authority, not symbolic authority, actual command over armies and territory. Around 1475, in Spain specifically, chess rules underwent what historians now literally call Mad Queen chess, a dramatic rules revision that gave the queen the combined movement power of a rook and a bishop simultaneously, letting her move any distance, in any direction, across the entire board. From the weakest piece in the game to instantly the strongest, in the span of roughly a single generation. That's not a coincidence of timing. Chess had spent 600 years quietly reflecting one specific cultural assumption, that the person beside the king was a minor advisor, easily replaceable, barely worth defending. Then European society watched real queens seize genuine, undeniable political power, and the game itself rewrote its own fundamental rules to catch up with a reality nobody had encoded into it before. The board didn't just get more fun to play, it got more historically honest. So here's the actual point, and it's bigger than any individual date or empire. Every version of chess that ever existed was a mirror, not a pastime. Indian rulers built a board that encoded their absolute terror of losing a king in battle. Persian courts layered formal etiquette onto that same terror, because protocol mattered as much as the war itself. Islamic scholars stripped the pieces of recognizable human and animal form because of a religious constraint nobody playing chess today ever consciously thinks about, yet everyone's board still reflects. And medieval Europe, watching actual queens actually rule, finally admitted through a board game, something it had been reluctant to say out loud, that the woman standing next to the king might be the most dangerous person on the entire battlefield. None of these civilizations sat down and consciously decided to build a psychological self-portrait. They just kept adjusting the rules until the game finally matched what they were actually afraid of, and what they'd finally been forced to admit was true. You've probably played this exact game without ever once wondering why the queen moves the way she does, why checkmate means what it means, or why every single piece on that board looks like an abstract shape instead of a tiny soldier. The answer was never really about strategy. It's a 1400-year record of what different civilizations were terrified of losing, quietly rewritten onto 64 squares, one empire at a time.